All right, fans, welcome to another episode of Digging for Wisdom. There's my guy, my dude, Professor Diggs. He's right there for us. He's ready to break down another week of football. We only got 3 left, so it's time to play some ball. And, man, I really want to start this whole podcast off talking about the resurgence of Allen, who I probably left for dead there after 2 weeks of football because they just didn't look like they were playing. They're losing to Houston teams, guy. And even I stick up.
You were like, okay, if we had North Shore versus Allen, how high? What point do you think they would quit running up the score? Do you think it'd be at 80 or 90? Is what you were talking about?
We're talking crazy.
And now we have a world where there is a potential projection for a Plano East versus Allen first-round playoff game. What a world we live in after you killed everybody. You had like Flower Mound and Prosper Rock Hill playing in the first round of the playoffs. You're just very excited about that. But now we got the resurgent Allen. And do you know what I like about Allen, the way they're doing it? They're doing it like an old-fashioned style sort of football that travels very well. It's not like you have to hope for your quarterback to throw for 300 or 400 yards every single game. They did it with defense. They did it with running the ball. They did it with their line play. And that is the kind of style of play that travels well in November. And I even joked on the dump, it travels well into December because we've seen Prosper make it to the 4th round the last couple of years, and to where whoever gets out of that 5-6A has a really good chance to win the region. So this is not necessarily a state championship Allen caliber team, but they're going to be a hard out. I mean, what style of football matches up very well against them? They're basically playing the way we want Louisville to play right now, except I think Louisville has a little bit better parts, but right now we're seeing Allen actually execute what is best to their offensive scheme, and they're just playing great football right now. It is fun to watch. They completely dominated McKinney in a game where they didn't really completely dominate him. If you look at the stats, it was a situation where it was very similar, but Allen converted 3rd downs. Allen made timely passes when they needed to make passes, and they got big yards on 1st down, which made McKinney have to guess defensively, and they just weren't suited to do that. It's fun times for Allen right now. I think Allen fans have to be watching this team. They've had some very impressive teams over the last 20 years with just like a cautious optimism. Like, yeah, you can't really name all the big players, Sibley and Hawkins, and all the big players you're expecting to be there aren't there right now for one reason or another. But this team is just gelling in a very special way right now, Ward. It's kind of fun to watch. Even if you're just a casual football fan, it's just fun to watch.
Right. It's fun to see a good guy and a good coach like Lee Wigington, kind of find his footing at coaching up there at Allen, kind of get things going there. Because people know this that live here in Texas. That is probably the most difficult place to coach because you have such a huge school and all this talent, and if you make that football team, the parents there are just on the players, on their sons, saying you made this team and putting added pressure on them to the point where it's probably driving some of these kids crazy. If they start off 0-2, they're going to hear it from their fans, their folks, and they're like, I don't know how we're going to get our footing down. And it's a coach like Wigington's got to not only turn the thing around, but get the kids' confidence back and say, you guys are great 6A players. Let's get this thing started. Now they've won 5 in a row. They're ready to take on another Power and Geyer this week. And then if you flip it to McKinney, they have athletes everybody would love at almost every position except for one very important position, and that's they don't have the athletic arm to throw the ball, and that's it's killing them, isn't it? I mean, they're putting 9-10 in the box, and there's nothing they can do about it.
And I think one element that you talked about when we were talking preseason is that they also don't have the offensive line. Offensive line is a big struggle for them. And Allen, they probably got 8 or 9 kids who would all start at McKinney because they've got the depth. They've got that strength and conditioning program. I mean, Allen, if you don't follow all of high school sports like we do here at Inside High School Sports, because we just don't cover some of them. Allen wrestling is like a legitimate, just a ridiculous powerhouse, like won 12 straight state championships. And a lot of that has to do with the strength and conditioning program over there. It's legendary at Allen. And they've always had good offensive line play. And right now, I think what you said with the defensive strategy of loading the box up against McKinney and saying, beat us. Let's see how good those players are. And they had no ability to take advantage on one-on-one offensive wide receivers on the edges. And that is the formula. And I think we're going to see other teams stick with that. And and with this really hard stretch coming up for McKinney, which of those teams are really going to be, do you look at and go, oh, McKinney can take advantage of that? Denton Geyer's got great line play, and Prosper has probably the best line play of 5-6A right now. I think everybody's just going to line up like Allen did against McKinney, and I have a hard time seeing McKinney winning another game in this run.
Yeah, it's the other teams are like, thanks, Allen, for showing us the blueprint. We're going to go ahead and follow that thing and try to put them down. But let's go ahead and start at 3-6A. Let's get started on this week's games because
we got to get to our moral compass, Ward. Euless Trinity points the way to high school football excellence. Always has. Even at 4-3, we love our Trinity.
We love our Trinity, and they're heading to Crowley ISD State and take on Crowley. That could kind of show us what kind of squad Crowley has. I mean, if we haven't learned by now, they're 7-0. If we haven't learned by now, this will teach us something. So tell me what you think about this game.
I think when I look at Euless Trinity, they have been very consistently average to a slightly above average. Their defense has been easily run on at times, but their offense has been very good. Crowley has been up and down. When Crowley is good, they are really good. But when Crowley has that second half where you kind of scratch your head, and even this game against Pascal, you talk about style points. The way they played around with Pascal is completely, to me, just boggling. So I'm looking at Crowley, and Crowley is a better team. If we have our hypothetical Madden, we put Crowley's athletes on the team, we put Trinity's athletes on a team, and we play it in Madden. Crowley should win 8 of 10 of those games. But Crowley has shown us a couple of clunkers in the second half. And if Trinity can take advantage of something like that, they could certainly win. But I don't like, as a prognosticator, predicting a team to not have their best game. And we're going to talk about this a few times, like with Lake Highlands. When Lake Highlands is down, they look ugly. But when they look good, they look really good, as we saw them beat Highland Park and then almost lose to Richardson. Crowley is kind of in that same vein as trying to build that consistency for 48 minutes. And I just think of the Duncanville DeSoto comparisons we're keeping on talking about. Duncanville has made that happen. Duncanville can be locked in for 48 minutes as long as they need to play, and they're going to give you good, consistent football. Crowley is still learning how to win. And now they have a new coach, and so this is a little bit of the growing pains. But Euless Trinity, this is the second year of their coaching staff. So I think Crowley has the talent and should be a favorite in this game, but it's not going to surprise me at all if we see Crowley mess around in the second half again to see Euless Trinity come back in the second half and win that game. Right. And Crowley put together 48 full minutes, they should be a favorite. If they mess around with Euless Trinity, Trinity will take advantage of that.
And Trinity has proven to play in that second half, at least early in the year. They showed that against Prosper, almost came back and got them. Another game in that district is Boswell against Weatherford. I think Boswell has played their way out because of that 2-point loss to Bell. But Weatherford still wants to get in this thing, and they're going to need to get some wins, and a win against Boswell will go a long way.
They played their way out, but they can play their way back in. This is very much the same scenario as the 6-6A scenario that we'll talk a little bit about, where you had 3 straight weeks where you had Hebron beat Plano East, and then you had Plano East beat Flower Mound, and you had Flower Mound beat Hebron. This is kind of that setting up the same exact way. We had Weatherford, beating Bell, and now we got Bell beating Saginaw, and now we're looking at Saginaw and Weatherford. And because they know exactly what they need, only losing by 2, and Weatherford only beating Bell by 3. Saginaw Boswell does not need to win this game by a lot. If they win this game by 4, 5, 6, they're going to win that tiebreaker if everything else is clean. But as we know, in this district, we still got LD Bell, Euless Trinity, and that's really what LD Bell has to overcome. So LD Bell is cheering for Boswell because they want to get Boswell into, they want to get into that 3-way tie and get into that. But if Boswell loses, then LD Bell can look at it and go, okay, well, now we got to get into a Weatherford Trinity us tie. What I like about this game for Boswell is that Boswell, I think we're going to see a shootout, first of all. I think Boswell and Weatherford both have really athletic offenses and questions on defense. Weatherford, for me, doesn't have a consistent offensive battle, but I think Boswell does. Boswell got shut down in the second half by LD Bell's defense. So, it's, again, that whole 48-minute mindset. So when I look at these teams, even though we've seen that Weatherford beat Bell and Bell beat Boswell, I think that Boswell is a better team, and if they can give us the 48 minutes. So I think we're going to see Boswell win this game. I think they're going to win this game enough to get back into that 4th seed and overcome that loss against LD Bell. That game, from what I remember, all the scoring was in the first half, and then you had that middle 24 minutes, kind of like we've seen with Crowley, where nothing much is going on. So Boswell has to play that consistency for 48 minutes. If they can play that consistency for 48 minutes, I think they can put 60 on Weatherford.
All right.
But they're going to give up 40 at the same time. So
hey, that's still good enough.
Ready for that one.
That's still good enough to win. And then we just want that Bell Trinity game to mean something at the end of the year. I mean, I know you do, and I know I do. So
it's guaranteed something. If they can beat Trinity, assuming Trinity loses to Crowley, because you need to have them with that 2 losses, because then that 3rd loss will mean something if LD Bell can avoid the 3rd loss of their own. But already beating Boswell is definitely going to put them in prime position the way their schedule works out to where they're looking at the 3 losses. Now, if the 3 teams with 3 losses are all Bell, Boswell, and Weatherford, then they're probably going to lose that tiebreaker as is. But if you can get Trinity involved in that tiebreaker, then they can do something in that last week to where they know how many points they have to win by. It may be a tall order to not only beat Trinity, but beat them convincingly. But what you're saying, Ward, is there a chance? I think we're going to have a chance.
That's what I like to hear. Let's move on to 4-6A. Now, look, everybody, 4-6A fans are just, let's get through this week so we can get to the Byron Nelson South Lake Carroll game. But I mean, we knew Keller was going to struggle with these 2 teams, but boy, did they took an absolute beating of the likes they probably did not expect to take. They probably expected to stay within 3 scores of them, and they were nowhere near 3 scores of either one of them. Now, I know they're hurting, but now they have a game against Fossil Ridge, and they got to get right.
And that's the problem with Keller in my analysis of this game, is that they are hurting. When you look at their box scores, the big yardage that was being put up in the first half of the season, those players aren't here right now. They're good. Running back is a little bit banged up. He hasn't been in there, which is a couple of their receivers, which has helped hurt with their depth. Not only did they lose to Carroll and Byron Nelson, they got beat up by Carroll and Byron Nelson. And they also have some injuries on the line play, which kind of makes everything else worse, which makes your quarterback have to press. And then all of a sudden you get 6 turnovers like they did against Byron Nelson, and you really start to put your offense in a no-win situation. I really like the back and forth. People say that, the teams don't listen to podcasts. The teams don't, read the bulletin board material. But Byron Nelson, they sure wanted the style points. They wanted the style points against Keller. They wanted to show a very direct message to Southlake that, yes, we were looking at you. Look what you did to Keller. This is what we're going to do to Keller. And, I think they kind of gave him a little bit of the salt. We saw that with Wylie East and Wylie, a little bit of that competitive, we're going to put on the gas a little bit longer in this game. So for me, and now you're taking probably the biggest Keller ISD rivalry, or correct me if I'm wrong, Keller Fossil Ridge, biggest rivalry in Keller ISD.
Yep. I agree with that.
And even when these teams have been bad, they're going to sell out that stadium, and it is going to be a fun atmosphere. Now you're putting it for Fossil Ridge basically having a chance to ruin Keller's year. You're going to get everything. And they got the players. Cundiff is a heck of a running or quarterback for Fossil Ridge. So Fossil Ridge, if Cundiff is on and they are having a top-tier kind of a game, they can beat this beat-up Keller team. And I think they would revel in that opportunity. I'm going to take Keller in this game, but it is the ultimate trap game. I'm only going to take Keller by 7 because I think Fossil Ridge is going to give them everything they want. Now, if Keller gets healthy and happy and gets kind of things back, maybe they can figure something out there. But they're pretty banged up, Ward. I think they need to get to the playoffs and see what comes their way, maybe getting a weaker D2 or Division I second seed, and they got to get that first seed.
Yeah, Bell or Trinity or something like that. But if they stumble against Fossil Ridge, and then you got an upstart Timber Creek team coming, I mean, we could start queuing up Tom Petty here with some free falling if this mess keeps going. But they got to get healthy. We say that a lot down the end of the stretch. The bye week is come and gone for them, so They got to get healthy on the fly.
Yeah,
all right, now we are at
about the reverse Cedar Hills going on, and the reverse
exactly.
South Grand Prairie. Just whoop, right on out of here.
Yep, going the wrong direction. If we move over to 5-6A, we talked a lot about Allen, but the defending champion's still there. They got 2 losses by 3 points each when they lost to. They gave Alito the best game they've had this year, and then they lost by 3 to Prosper. So Geyer's right there. They have their Isaac Carney in there. Is that his last name, or is it Haney? I forget what his last name is. Who's the quarterback they got going? I'll have you look it up while I'm.
They got multiple quarterbacks. You got Logan McLaughlin, who
I don't think McLaughlin hasn't been playing of late, so or at least the last game he didn't play. But they do have the receivers that makes anybody looks good. Josiah Martin has got like 46 catches, something like that, and he's getting open. A couple other guys are getting open. They're going to run into a team. Allen, we talked about McKinney that can't throw the ball. Geyer can throw the ball, so we're going to have to mix it up a little bit on the defense.
And they did throw the ball with Isaac Harney.
I said Harney first. I should have stuck with it.
You got to believe in your gut.
I have no confidence.
He went 17 for 21, 310 yards and 5 touchdowns against Denton Braswell. But, Braswell's defense is not really known for playing that kind of lockdown corner defense. And the thing we talked about Allen is that depth across the board. And Allen is definitely going to be, I think, be able to play defensively a lot stronger. To me, this very much sets up the way that the McKinney game set up, to where if Allen can just, be able to churn out the yardage, they should win this game. I think Allen is going to avenge last year's game. As you remember that game, Ward, that was just an absolute brutal beating where you got to see, all the Bowens score all the different ways in just about, one fashion after another.
One of the most nastiest injuries I ever saw too was Sibley. That was tough to watch, but keep going.
Yeah, it's an absolutely. I think this is they've got revenge on their mind in this game as a chance, and it's at Allen this year because that game last year was on ESPN at Denton. I think Allen at home is going to beat Geyer in a very close contested game. I think like a 24-21 sort of game. Those Allen Eagles are going to be flying high and getting ready for the district championship against Prosper.
It's a fun time of year at 5-6A. I know I'm getting 5-6A emails every week. What's the deal? Why don't you ever show anything? I said, well, we'll get you in the last 4 weeks. That's when the bangers are. The bangers are happening in the last 4 weeks. I mean, we got you in non-district, and now we're playing some district games. So it'll be fun out there at Allen. I'll be at that game, actually. It'll be our game of the week, so I'll be out there to see what they're all about. Let's move on to 6-6A, if you don't mind, and I know you don't. We got all sorts of turmoil going on there. I think we feel Coppell's 1. We feel that Louisville's probably 2, but we playing ball. The rest of them, everybody's ready to go. Talk to me.
When we're talking about the volleyball tiebreakers right now, we got Plano East and Flower Mound, and we got Plano West. Again, we talk about all the sports here. You said you just queued me up to 6-6A and said I can talk about whatever I want to. And last Tuesday, we talked about how I was going to go cover my first volleyball game, and those Fighting Panthers knocked off your Jaguars. Plano East is just owning Flower Mound. We got a little plot of land over a corner of your house over there. It just says Diggs and Panthers on it right now. We're moving in, Ward. We're moving in.
I tell you what, we're not going to be calling Digging for Wisdom much longer. It's just going to be called Wisdom because I can't take much more of this. And by the way, you ruined a lot of Ranger fans' that night. We're trying to read the Ranger tweets, and we're getting bombarded with every single point from the Plano East Flower Mound volleyball game. It's 1-0 now. Now it's 1-1. Now it's 2-1. I was like, Diggs, I got to mute you out.
It's a lot of volleyball back and forth with that. But you asked what we're going to do about these 3rd and 4th playoff spots right now. I really feel like Marcus has kind of figured it out. We got a new Nussmeier in their ward. We got the younger Nussmeier getting in there all of a sudden, and now we got a 2-headed monster over there at Marcus. They're getting healthy. Their running back is playing really good, and they got depth. At running back. I think they're starting to figure out their identity and start, I think that game against Coppell, even though you looked at it 2 weeks ago, 20-6, they lost, what is this? I think that was them figuring it out. They got a little bit of defensive consistency to hold Coppell to only 20 points, their lowest output of the year. And now all of a sudden that their offense is getting there. Marcus looks like they're peaking at the right time, so I'm going to go ahead and stick them at the number 3 spot. So now we got to figure out this number 4 spot. And right now we got 4 teams that have their own destiny in hand. You got Plano West, Plano East, Flower Mound, and Hebron. Well, the most likely scenario, if you look at the calibration so far, is that can Flower Mound or Hebron beat Coppell or Louisville in any of the remaining games? For me, I don't think that's very likely. I think Coppell and Louisville, there's a big gap between that and the rest of the district, because Hebron and Flower Mound have both already lost to Marcus, so Marcus is not going to factor into that. Plano East still has Marcus in week 11. So now to get off of that 3 and 4 tiebreaker, somebody has got to beat Coppell or Louisville. I don't think that's going to happen. So then you got Plano West over here, because Plano West has Flower Mound, Hebron, and Plano East left. Can Plano West win all 3 of those games? Absolutely. If they win all 3 of those games, they're going to go 4-3, and they will be the 4 seed. But this week we got Plano East and Plano West. So if Plano East can beat Plano West, now they've got their 3 wins. So how is Hebron or Flower Mound going to get to win 4? You got to beat Coppell. You got to beat Louisville. Yeah. If you can't do that, now we're going to have a 3-way tie at 3 and 4. That tiebreaker has already been set. Plano East will win that tiebreaker because they beat Flower Mound by 16, which in district tiebreakers is 15 because you get a max win. They've won that tiebreaker. They were +5. They beat Flower Mound by 15, lost to Hebron by 10, so that's +5. Then you had Hebron. They beat Plano East by 10, but lost to Flower Mound by 7, so they're +3. And then you got Flower Mound over there who lost by 15, but they beat Hebron by 7, so they're -8. Winner of that tiebreaker is your Plano East Panthers. So if all 3 teams go 3 and 4, Plano East will get that 4th playoff spot, kind of like what Plano did last year. A little bit different. Plano won their first 3 games and lost their last 4 to limp their way into the playoffs. But that gives Plano East a really great opportunity. And even if for whatever reason they lose to Plano West this week, they still have a chance to play Marcus straight up to get into the playoffs, to get back into that tiebreaker. So Plano East will be playing meaningful football in week 11 for the first time since 2018, Ward. Where's your camera? And we might even get you at a camera because, all the big games on Thursday of week 11 or on Thursday of week 11, you're sending all the A-teamers out on Thursday. So Friday, You're looking for games. It might be Panther time for you, Ward.
It may be. Hey, it may be Panther time for Pat Doney. If he's got to have a game Friday night, he may show out there. Well, you never know. By the way, you begged me to talk to Coach Basil and get them to get that win. I did it for you, so I need you give me some sort of DoorDash coupon or something for doing what you asked me to do. They're hobbling over there at Jaguar Land, and they still pulled it. That's what makes me, if out of all the teams, you got Hebron there that they picked up their win against who they get their win against. They got their 2 wins against Plano East and Plano. I don't want to talk about the Plano East game, but they technically should have won all 4 of the games they played so far. They had no business losing to the Marcus game. And then the Flower Mound game, you got a hobbled team coming in there, and they couldn't come up with a way to pull that win out, and they lost. They only scored 14 in that game. They should have the 4 wins, and they should be just sitting there. You should be talking great about them. But instead, now they got the big dogs coming up, and they're going to find a way not to make the postseason in my eyes, just the way they've been so inconsistent. So that's what I have to say about Hebron. I don't even know where I was going with that. I was just so angry about not getting the DoorDash.
We talked about them. I mean, they lost to Wylie earlier after beating Jesuit, after Jesuit beats Rockwall, and you're just like, okay, and you're calibrating these things.
And Wylie showed you what they are.
Yeah, poor Wylie. They're still hurting from that Wylie East game. But, this has been an excellent, about consistency. And Hebron has really struggled with consistency this year. And you see it from week 1, and now you see it in week 7. They don't play for 48 minutes. They have these ups and downs. When I was breaking down the Plano East Hebron game, I said, Hebron will give you the 2 mistakes. Can you, not make the mistakes yourself? And Flower Mound was able to limit their mistakes. The strength, they still made mistakes, but the mistakes weren't as brutal as Hebron was. Hebron made their 2 mistakes, but Flower Mound's mistakes were less crucial, and they took the win. And like you said, they were hobbled. I mean, Watson came out there, but he didn't finish the game. So he's just coming out there basically on 1 foot, dancing around, trying to throw the ball. And we talked about Erdman. He got hurt against Plano East, and he was basically out there as just a step back passer in this game. So credit Basil and what Flower Mound does. They find a way to make the parts. They got so many parts, and they got to play Plano this week. And now Plano's desperate for a win. They got to throw the whole kitchen book at Flower Mound. But Flower Mound has been right there on all the Plano ISD teams. I think Flower Mound's going to blow out Plano. I think they're going to their offensive style versus the way Plano likes to play. I think Flower Mound's going to win like a 35-14 kind of a game against Plano this week.
Yeah, Plano does seem like a mess right now. Moving to 7-6A, speaking about messes, Berkner is busted up. They get the open week, so maybe they can get healthy there, get that quarterback back, and then it's almost like 2 open weeks at the end of the season because they're playing teams that are struggling down the stretch. But it brings you right back to that Pierce game when they played Berkner. If Pierce could have found a way, and the same thing when they played Jesuit. There was 2 losses that they could have had wins, and I look at the run sheet and you got them, if they went out, which is hard to believe they could because they got to play Highland Park and Lake Highlands. But as you always say, there is a chance. They had their chances, I feel, in those 2 games that they turned it that were losses that could have been wins. But talk to me about Pierce's window to get in there and cause all kinds of havoc.
Basically, there's only 2 meaningful games left with the top 5 teams. They've all played each other. So we're going to talk about with 6-5A later on with South. All those games, the meaningful games have happened. So you got 2 meaningful games left, and one of them is this week. We got Pierce against Lake Highlands, and then you got Pierce against Highland Park in week 11. And if Pierce hypothetically wins both of those games and everybody beats the Irving schools and Richardson like you would expect them to do so, we would have 5 teams tied at 6-2 there, where you'd have to have all kinds of crazy tiebreakers. And one of those 5 teams would end up not making the playoffs. And if you remember, Ward, all those Berkner and Lake Highlands and Jesuit and Berkner games were all blowouts. So we have some really big point differentials. And then Jesuit blew out Berkner this past week. And then you got Pierce, who's sitting there with all these 3-point losses, 7-point losses, who, if they can get in there, they may win district. Yeah. I mean, if Pierce can win these 2 games, the way once you start getting point differentials in there, because necessarily with our hypothetical, they would have had to beat Highland Park and they would have to beat Lake Highlands in there. And then there are 2 losses against Jesuit and Berkner, very small losses. I mean, they're looking at a chance to win district. And which team would it end up being? Highland Park, who ends up losing out of the the playoff situation? I don't think it's going to happen. But it's a fun hypothetical to romanticize about this 5-way tie at 6-2, where one team won't make it.
Let them stay close with Lake Highlands in the first half. Lake Highlands, man, I'm not going to call them Hebron with the inconsistency, but they have inconsistent tendencies because they had to struggle to go to overtime to beat Richardson, and then the loss to Berkner. Then all of a sudden they gave Highland Park a 2-day beating to get that win. But Pierce can win that one. I mean, there's a chance they can win that. I don't think they can beat the Highland Park game at the end, but it would be interesting if that did happen. So we'll have to see. What is your prediction for that? I'm sure you're picking Lake
Highlands as far as that goes. The thing with Lake Highlands that I just can't get over is every time we leave them for dead, the next week they come back and do something completely remarkable, like what they did again. That they lost to Flower Mound, they're done. We can just start to ruin them, and then they come out and they completely destroy Highland Park, and then they struggle with Berkner, and then they come back out and they're starting to look good. Now they've struggled with Richardson, but they got the win. I think they're going to come back out and give us a little bit more consistency now that they've, the coach over there can really ream into them. I think if they mess around, Pierce is going to win, like you said. So it would not surprise me to see Pierce win this game. We even talked about it last week. We highlighted Richardson against Lake Highlands, and we kind of had this conversation about, this is a good chance for Richardson to show us a little bit something for next year. And they did in this game. So now can Lake Highlands recalibrate and get more focused to beat Pierce, who they should beat? I think they can, but it would not surprise me at all to see Pierce beat them.
Got you.
For the official prediction, Lake Highlands by 7.
By 7, okay. Well, that's close. That's closer than I thought you were going to say.
Respectable, right?
Yeah, that's respectable.
I'm a respectable sort of guy.
And then when I take a look at your picks, you got Timberview over Sunset by 73 points or something like that. You don't care. All right, let's talk about 8-6A. I mean, Arlington
Gunner beat Howell this week, 82-0. It happens more.
It does happen. You do get that 80 pointer.
It's me. I'm the one who will go out there and say 82-0.
You will be the one that says that. You're exactly right. 80-point spread. Can we talk about A6A now? Because I want to talk about Arlington.
I'm getting excited about A6A. This is turning into a really fun.
Starting to get juicy, and they're playing. The Colts are playing Lamar. A lot of close losses at Arlington, which makes some people say, "Oh, I'm not quite sure who they are. They look like they can play close." Well, that's who they are. They are a team that can play you close and not win. And now they are playing Lamar, and they have to find a way to play them close and win. Otherwise, their doors can be shut fairly soon.
We need to merge Arlington's first half Arlington with second half Euless Trinity, and I think we will have a heck of a football team because these weeks you got Arlington out there getting big leads up on Bowie, getting big lead up on SGP, and second half just completely mess around and lose the game and lose it in heartbreaking fashion. For me, Lamar is just a little bit below Bowie and South Grand Prairie, so I think Arlington's going to get up on them big and stay up on them big. I don't have any faith in Lamar right now, especially since they only beat Grand Prairie by a score this past week. So I got Arlington to lock in that fourth playoff spot and pretty much give us the 4 playoff teams here. We talked about 80 burgers. What about Arlington Martin going 82 on Sam Houston? You talk about style points. They're listening to this podcast board. We wrote them off. You remember we were kicking them out of the rankings and said they're done. They're not going to score another point this year. They're going to win 5-0 games. And I think they took that personally, Ward, because we have seen an offensive explosion out of Arlington Martin.
And then it makes you nervous for Grand Prairie because that's another winless team that has to play against Martin. And then there might be the game that I might go shoot just to see who gets a win when Sam Houston plays Grand Prairie, the 0-9 bowl against each other.
Ward, you are there. And you will find a way to tell that story in such a way. You'll find 2 kids with it'll be pink out night and their parents will have had breast cancer. And you'll tell that story and make us all cry while we're trying to watch the 0-9 highlights.
That's the goal. Get them cry. Felt like I had an 0-9 highlight in that 10-7 game last week from Frisco and Heritage. But before we skip off of 8-6A, who's going to finish second? Who's going to finish third? Because Bowie's playing South Grand Prairie this week.
Yeah, I mean, I've stayed on the South Grand Prairie bandwagon. I mean, this is the Bowie team that lost to Plano at the end of the day. So, we're talking about regional calibrations. South Grand Prairie is not figured out that consistency, but when South Grand Prairie is played at their peak, they have shown that they are the second best team in this district. I think, as long as they give me 3 quarters, give me 3 quarters of SGP football, I think they're going to be able to win this game. Bowie's defense is a little bit suspect, and SGP is getting a little bit better on the offensive side of the ball. I think we got a 35-28 kind of a win for South Grand Prairie.
All right. Well, let's get in our time machine to last week. When we discussed 9-6A, we just sat there and we were like, okay, we pretty much got the 4 teams in there. Now it's all about seedings, where they're going to fall. Then I'd look at the run sheet, and after a beating that Wylie takes, all of a sudden I see Wylie and Naaman Forest on the run sheet. And the only reason it could possibly be on there is because Wylie is so shook by losing by 8 touchdowns to Wylie East. Maybe they'll blame it on the fact that they had to play at 6 o'clock and they just weren't ready for a 6 p.m. game. You got to put me at 7. But here it is on the run sheet against Naaman Forest, a team that struggled to beat South Garland for their first win. What do you think is going to happen in this game, and can Wylie get themselves back on track?
It's basically the last game that has meaning. If Wylie beats Naaman Forest, we're done. We can just go ahead and clinch them up. We've got some seeding games still to play. But, it is what it is. But you look at Wylie, they still got Saxey left. They still got Garland left. Those could be 2 losses. That's 4 and 3. You get Naaman Forest. If Naaman Forest beats them, we could have look at Naaman Forest, what they have left. They've got, North Garland, South Garland. They got some winnable games left, and they played their tough games. So this is basically Naaman Forest's last chance to get up into Wylie's level and get some sort of positive tiebreaker. Once Wylie's beat Naaman Forest, we're done with this district. Is it going to happen? Probably not, but the way Wylie played last week, where you just look at their offense, it had nothing. You look at their defense; they couldn't do anything. are they shook? Can they get out of this fog and step back against a really good, well-coached name and force team? And I always say, when you have a coach's son at quarterback, it's like 12 against 11. So now you got a Wylie defense that is a little bit questioning of who they are and their identity after what Wylie East did to them. I got this game on upset watch, Ward, but I'm going to go ahead and take Wylie by 10. But it's a game to watch.
I agree, a game to watch, because it's one thing to get manhandled by a team and be dominated and lose like 35-10. But when you lose 66-10, that means you gave up. At some point in the game, you gave up. And if your team's going to give up, that's hard to get that to get them back on track, because if they see a little bit of stuff going downhill, then who knows if they're going to do it again. So I'd be worried if I was Coach Carter, because you got to get that locker room straight. I'm sure he's hollering at them this week and getting them going, but 66-10 in a rivalry game tells me you gave up somewhere down the stretch.
Yeah, we talk about tough. The spirit of Wylie. I mean, they're saying it's ammo, and it's that toughness. It's that Wylie grit. This is a Wylie team, as we're going to talk about when we move to 10-6A, that beat Mesquite Horn last year. Mesquite Horn, we thought, was on the rise, and all of a sudden they gritted out a big win against Mesquite Horn. And obviously, when you get to Duncanville, all bets are off anyway. But this is a Wylie team that had a sophomore quarterback and some really good defensive players. And like you said, there had to be some level of quit in that game against Wylie East, or some level of just defeat or lack of effort as far as that goes. So can they reach into that almost spirit and get back there? That's going to be what I think is going to be the storyline of this game. It's going to be a fun one to keep an eye on. I think so. I mean, that Almo spirit is, that they grow up as 7th and 8th graders thinking Almo, and that mindset. So I do think they'll bounce back, but if they haven't bounced back, if it's in their mind, Naaman Forest is certainly good enough to win this game.
Yeah. All right, well, you brought them up, so we're moving to 10-6A. Mesquite Horn, I feel like the whole year we've kind of given them the benefit of the doubt, because we like Courtney Allen. I like him, at least. I think you like him as well. We like him. We like the kind of guy he is, and we turn it around. But as much rope as we given them, they're going to end up hanging themselves at some point. They only got the 2 games left, and that 10-7 non-offensive showing against Legacy, and now they have to play Heath. And now, I mean, it's a must-win, because it's over after that if they can't beat Heath. Talk to me about this game.
You like stories, Ward. You like to tell stories and whatnot, and we know this basically, this 10-6A is like this is your life kind of a thing with Coach Webb over there. He started out at Mesquite Horn and Royce City over to Mesquite Horn, and then the Denton Geyer years we don't talk about very much. All he did was make it to the state semifinals a couple of times, and now we got him back at Rockwall Heath, maybe ending up his time as before he moves up to the next role and taking that athletic director position. We made the prediction that we think in the next 5 years, Rodney Webb will end up as AD at Rockwall. When we're going to get Russ Reeves a promotion, we're going to stick him on, we're going to send him to Austin. He's going to become like a UIL deputy director. So everybody's going to be happy in this story, kind of a thing. And now he's got to beat Mesquite Horn. And if he beats Mesquite Horn is basically not only done, but now he has sent his own team into Division I, where they're looking at probably a very quick fate into things, having to probably play Saxe the first round. And if they can get by that, it doesn't get much easier after that. So can Rodney Webb destroy the program he built to get his team probably a less favorable playoff run? There's some interesting storylines there, but for me, the easy answer is yes, he can, and yes, he will.
That sounds like some Star Wars stuff right there. Destroy what he built up. And then Tire Legacy was a team that you threw out there in the campfire as the 4th team to make the playoffs. And if they're going to do that, then it starts with the win over Royce City. If Royce City wins that game, then they're feeling good if they can somehow upset Horn down in the last week and whoever they got in week 10. I haven't checked that part of the schedule out, but talk to me about this Tyler Legacy Royce City game.
Isn't that weird that you just in your brain called it they would have to upset Horn, yet if they beat Legacy?
That's what I'm saying. We keep giving them the benefit of the doubt. I don't know why I keep doing it. It's because I like Coach Allen, I guess. I don't know.
what's not to like about Coach Allen? And they're all going to be cheering because that's their way back into this, because they only lost to Legacy by 3. If you can get Royce City a win over Legacy, and then Horn can beat Royce City, and then all of a sudden that 3-way tie, you win the tiebreaker as far as that. Now, if I remember right, Mesquite ISD does a weird tiebreaker, and I'll have to remember it. But back in the day, what they would used to do in a 3-way tie with 3 teams is they would take the bottom team out, and then they would go head to head. So there's weird things that have to happen with that. We talked about with the Plano East, Flower Mound, Hebron point differential, whoever got the highest would end up going. But with Mesquite in the past, I'm not saying they do it now because I do not have a catalog of all the tiebreakers, but Mesquite ISD in the past has had tiebreakers where they eliminate the bottom team and then go head to head with the top team. So but it still will give Mesquite Horn an opportunity to beat Royce City by a lot of points to maybe make them a team where they get pulled out, and then you can go head to head as far as that goes. But that actually might create a tiebreaker now that I'm listening to myself talk, where they don't want to beat Royce City too bad. They want to beat them, but not by enough to where, because if they are the ones who end up getting in the third place, if they do that tiebreaker, then all of a sudden the head to head goes back to Legacy and Mesquite Horn, and then you don't want to see that tiebreaker. So that's an interesting thing. I remember a tiebreaker a few years ago, Ward, where Everman was playing Burleson, I think it was, and there was a scenario where they had to win by 7 or lose by 7, because of the tiebreakers. So there was a point where there's let them score, we want to make the playoffs. So, we're not going to win this game. We don't want to lose this game by 4 or win this game by 4. We got to win by 7 or lose by 7. I'm sure Step would probably remember that it was 52 degrees that night. And I remember there's something weird with that. So it could be a same scenario with that. But Mesquite Horn has still got a little bit of life support, but I think Heath is going to knock them one step down this week and make it a little bit harder on them to get into that 4th playoff spot.
We need to bring back, and then the tiebreakers are confusing enough, but for ends of games, we need to bring back penetrations. Remember that from the North Mesquite days when they lost to South Florida?
This is a family-friendly podcast. We don't want to talk about that. You're going to be talking about soon. You're going to want to bring the Elam ending to
Elam ending. High school hoops. Let's bring that in there.
All right, the college day. We're going to bring it to the pro days. If we were doing the Elam ending on that Frisco against Heritage game, it still may not be over.
It still would be going.
You got to win by get to a certain score. You got to play 21. It'd still be out there taking field goals.
All right, so there's some warm-up games for the big Duncanville DeSoto game. Duncanville has probably an easier task because they got Skyline on Thursday, which I'm still wondering why. Is that a TV game? Why are they playing it Thursday? Duncanville's a one-school team. Why are they not playing on Friday?
Isn't it a situation? I mean, I know they have Fair Day, or Fair Week.
Maybe that's it.
Where you'll see some Dallas.
Whatever it is, I'll be there at the camera because I don't feel like going out to Stephenville on Thursday. So I'll get a little bit of this Duncanville joint and come on home and see what the Thursday night football game.
Ward, let's road trip out to Stephenville together. What do you say? You and I
don't think so.
Get in the car and head on out there.
It's not going to happen.
I would force you to stay the whole game. I know you like to get out of there real quick.
Yeah, exactly.
Get your
I'll let Bally's take care of that for me. Listen to me. I'm talking about the battle for Beltline.
But I'm talking about 4A Division I state championship caliber China Spring, Lord.
We'll get to it, and you'll see.
You're going to make me mad dismissing small schools again. Why do you hate small schools so much? You want to talk about state championship teams like North Shore and Duncanville and DeSoto and all these big-name schools. I want to talk about Brock and Paradise, Ward.
Well, you'll see that on my show, too. So all the stuff you're talking to me, you're going to see both of those highlights on the show this week. So
okay.
I demand my respect in this life or the next.
But you're just selling to Bally's. You're doing trading with Bally's. You're over here wheeling and dealing like the
wheeling and dealing. Who wants some? Who wants
I'll give you a Lake Belton, Midlothian for a Brock Paradise.
I'll have that one too, but that's not from Bally's. I'll have Lake Belton and Midlothian on the show because my main man Marcus is going to be shooting that for me. Love that guy, Marcus. Y'all don't know who he is, so I'll stop talking about him. Battle of Beltline. And you know how I usually like to do when I talk about DeSoto, I like to say, they play up and down in their competition. I'm not saying that this time. I'm saying they're going to win by 21-28. I'm saying they're going to be hungry to show that they're mad that they only get 9 games because Ryan didn't want to play them. They're mad because they've been talked about when are they going to stomp out? Why they let Wax play with them for so long? And they're going to go into Cedar Hill because it's on the road, break some poor girl's heart that's going to be watching it from the stands, and they're going to win by 21-28. Now, what do you say?
What would this poor girl's name be?
We mention her every week. Poor sweet Olivia. She's going to be a sad little girl out there.
Maybe we should write a song instead of Sweet Caroline. We can have Sweet Olivia.
Too many syllables.
Boom, boom.
She needs a nickname. She got to get a nickname or she ain't getting no songs. That's too many syllables.
Never lost so good. So good. So good. I think Cedar Hill's going to play with them. I think Cedar Hill's going to give them a 4-quarter game. You look at what they did to Martin. They gave Carroll 4 quarters, and DeSoto has not shown me that they can play 4 quarters yet. And what we've seen with Anthony Edwards at quarterback is he can give them that option to get 16 to 18 play drives all of a sudden and compress the game. So that to me doesn't kind of indicates that they're going to not blow them out. Now you're giving them 21. I can see 21, but I think it might be one of those 21s where they get a late touchdown to get to 21. Maybe it's 28-21 going into the 4th quarter, and now we get a couple of late touchdowns, maybe a pick 6 late or something to get it to that 21. So I'm not going to give you too much grief, but I think it's going to be a fun, competitive game for a majority of the game. But I do think DeSoto wins it. But I think it's going to be closer. I don't think it's going to be an Allen-like blowout.
Okay. Well, I would like to talk about DJ Bailey while we're on here because we don't talk about him nearly enough. 2 picks in 2 complete years where they played 16 games last year. They're played however many now, 7 right now or 6 because they didn't get to play one. And 2 picks, and I think it's over 60 touchdowns. We talk so much. I mean, you just finished talking about Marcus and you were worried about Nussmeier. The reason Nussmeier's getting in there is because Parlin's throwing 10 picks a year. And we talk about Lugo and all their problems. They don't have that problem with DJ Bailey. He's signed with he's verbally committed to Sam Houston right now, but I have a feeling they'll throw some offers at him even more as we go into the playoffs here. The dude is anything but is everything inconsistent because, yes, he's got many targets out there to throw to with Booby Feaster and Dalen Robinson out there, and he's chucking it to him, and he's finding them. He's still got to get the ball to these guys, and he's doing it without throwing any picks. So I got to give him his flowers as far as we talk about big-time quarterbacks. That's probably about the biggest quarterback we got going right now as far as showing up in big games, and I think he'll show up against Cedar Hill.
Have you ever started to measure his head for a bobblehead yet? Started to get that little –
He's getting one this week. Maybe
there you go. I mean, you're giving some
on the show this week. His head has been measured.
Spoilers right there. And to that point, when you watch a DeSoto game, it's not like they're doing these little bubble screens and dinks and dunks and whatnot. They're going vertical. They're throwing the ball down the field. And yeah, they have the receivers that are helping them out, but still, the ability to make those throws is a very important part of the game. And you talk about a Brock Purdy or something in the pro game, but if you make the right throws, you're going to get noticed. And if you keep doing that and you can eliminate turnovers, it really gives you an advantage. And you might have to work your way through the Sam Houston, like we talked about with Ishmael Mahdi, the Plano East running back who started out at Houston Baptist, and now he's at Texas State, scoring 80-yard touchdowns on Baylor, and probably going to work his way up to another level in this 5-year. College football is a completely different game. I know we're just not a college football podcast, but it's a situation where even if you start out at Sam Houston, you can work your way up real quick. And he looks like the kind of pedigree who can do that for sure.
Right. No, that's a good point. That's a very good point. He puts up the same numbers at Sam Houston. You'll see him at least at a MAC school or something like that, making his way up and getting to where he wants to get to. So excellent point. All right, we're going to 5A in the Alito train. The next stop is at Bearcat Stadium, but they played Denton Ryan. Last year was a very sweet competitive game, but that was last year. This is this year. Hoss Haney is just playing at another level, man. I sit here talking about DJ Bailey. Hoss Haney is the 5A equivalent of greatness there because I don't think Bailey runs nearly as much as Haney does. He doesn't have to. He can chuck it, stay back there and catch his breath. But Haney's all over the place, dude. And he gets it done early because he knows he ain't playing in the second half. I just enjoy watching that kid play. He's a TCU commit, and they just threw Josh Hoover in this week from Heath for TCU this week, but they've got to be excited about Haney coming through to get there. But anyway, talk about this game with Ryan.
It kind of gives you those Andy Dalton vibes, somebody who, he just doesn't necessarily get all the publicity out, but gets into a school like that and just continues to get better and make his programs better wherever he's at. And all of a sudden he's playing for the Bengals where, take over Joe Burrow's job in 2029 or something by the time Haney gets over to that level of football. And we're going to say, we talked about him here on the Digging for Wisdom podcast. Talked about Haas Haney, the future Cincinnati Bengal, covered by Ben Baby, beat writer of the Cincinnati Bengals on his 9th year on the beat, our man Ben Baby. Man, I'm just name dropping everywhere. We're just we go Andy Dalton and Ben Baby talking that football. And now we got to talk about Denton Ryan. Billy Ryan over there. That game against Aledo against Burleson Centennial that Aledo played was 42-0 at halftime, and they just kind of ran it into the ground. I think they're going to run Denton Ryan out of the building. The question is going to be, is it going to be a 24-minute game, a 36-minute game, or a 48-minute game? I think we're going to see Haney playing into the third quarter of this game. I think it's going to take a little bit because Denton Ryan has the athletes. And you talked about that was a good game last year. It was that good game. It was kind of like what we were talking about with Cedar Hill and DeSoto, where Aledo pulled away in the fourth quarter. A couple of things went against Denton Ryan, and they were able to make the win margin a little bit better than the game. The competitiveness of the game had shown. I don't think we're going to see that. I think we're going to see Aledo just take care of business. I think we're going to see a 35-7 halftime score and maybe a 49-7 in the fourth quarter, and then maybe Denton Ryan will score a couple of late touchdowns to make it a 49-21 sort of game. I don't think it's going to be a competitive game at all, Ward. But you know what happens every time we pick against Denton Ryan and we start to disrespect Coach Hennigan at the mouth? We start to become real disrespectful. He starts tweeting. He starts subtweeting at us, and they do something amazing. So could that happen here? Probably not. But
I was going to say,
acknowledge its possibility.
It's no not. I mean, you say 35-7.5, and it's. Ryan fans are like, here they go, tearing us down again. That's no knock against Ryan. And in this situation, this is just who Aledo is. Is this one of the best? I mean, Aledo wins championships like nobody's business. Is this one of the best Aledo teams? If you had to rank them at all, is there a championship team that you can see that is better than them this year or no?
Yeah, I mean, you get back to the Jonathan Gray days. That's – those I think those are all significantly better. And now you have the question mark of the first-year head coach, and you got Longview over there, or you got a really good team who's going to be coming out of Region 2 over there as kind of a obstacle for Aledo. So I don't think this is a slam dunk. Back to the Jonathan Gray days, they were all slam dunks. They were going to win every game by 30, 40. I think after they get out of Region, I think they're going to have a pretty good flow through the region. Lake Belton, Midlothian, whoever gets out of there. Red Oak, I think, will be competitive within 3 scores. I don't think they're just going to completely blow them out of the water. But that's basically your competition. The top 3 teams in 3 5A or in 4 5A are really your regional competitions. We saw that last year where they knocked off Burleson Centennial to get out of the region. So I think Aledo is going to have an easy time getting out of that region. But now you got a hungry potential Longview team who is going to be an underdog. Remember last year, everybody picked Longview to win that game, and Aledo had that chip on their shoulder, and they were able to harness that. And Coach Buchanan, he doesn't like being disrespected like that. 8-time Timmy. How can Coach Jones do against that? How is he going to be able to harness that, being the favorite against a really good team with probably the best running back in the nation who can flip a game completely upside down? I think there's something to be said there that's what doesn't make Aledo necessarily the best ever Aledo team. Have they got some really good talent? Maybe the most college players across the board coming out? Yeah, but I don't know if this is necessarily the best team that they've had relative to the competition they've had.
From the games that I've seen of Longview, which is 2 of them, the Forney game and McKinney game, McKinney High, the differences I see, I mean, Jonathan Gray, great running back, Taylor Tatum, great running back, but Bishop for Aledo just had to manage the times he had to throw, make plays whenever he had to throw, which was probably 7 to 10 times a game. And I don't think the Longview quarterback is able to do that. So when it's his time to do it, I mean, he made the big play against McKinney. That's just one. He got the guy to bite on it. But It certainly didn't happen against Forney. I don't know. I would take Aledo in that Longview game by 10 right now, at least. That's just from what I've seen in those games. But we're way far away from that. We're weeks and weeks away, which I like to say because whenever I start this thing off saying there's only 3 weeks left in the regular season, I get sad. But when I can say we're weeks away from the Longview game, then I get back to being happy again. So,
and to be fair for our podcast listeners, I would pick Aledo over Longview right now. But I mean, let's say that 10-point margin is kind of a universally, Aledo's 10 points better than Longview. That's just 2 turnovers. That's a special teams play. That's a quirky play, and all of a sudden, 1 or 2 plays. We see it every week, where those 1 or 2 plays happen. So Aledo is definitely a favorite over Longview. That's why we all have them number 1 in our state title game. But we always talk about the first-year coach. The last time a first-year coach won state, you got to go back to Wood and Steve Wood taking over a Coach Buchanan thing. It doesn't happen very often. So I'm a little bit nervous about Aledo finishing the bit, but they are everything they are advertised to be this year.
Well, let's move to 4-5A, and where are you feeling about Midlothian now? And we know how you felt about them at the beginning of the season, but now that we're coming up to the crux of their schedule, the fun game with Lake Belton they had last year, now it's at Lake Belton. How are you feeling about the Panthers at this moment in week 9?
I don't trust them. I want to trust them, but I just don't trust them yet. They haven't given me anything to show that, okay, I feel like this is a good team that can manage a game on the road and beat a team so much talented. I just think of that Seguin game, Ward. I mean, like no offense at all. And how are they going to get, I feel like Lake Belton can be beat through the air, and obviously they've got a player who can do that. That's it. How can you get him the ball? And can you get him the ball consistently? They haven't shown me through the stat sheet they can do that. I think Lake Belton's going to win this game, but as all these games are, it's going to be a one-score kind of a game, and I think Lake Belton will win a 35-28 sort of game, maybe 35-21. See, I think Lake Belton is more than a touchdown better, but you can't pick more than a touchdown in this district. So I think it'll be a 2-touchdown game for a majority of the game, but Midlothian will get a late score to get it back to 1 score, but a game that's not really in doubt for a majority of the game.
All right. Well, in his defense, that Seguin game was week 1. Okay, and it matters when you are a flex bone coach and you're trying to change your offense up a little bit for a top wide receiver in the nation to get him the ball more. And maybe they just weren't able to adjust a little bit on that. But I'm going to go by with the week 1, and they've gotten better throughout. So
they have definitely gotten better. I appreciate you're a Midlothian apologist over there. But at the end of the day, I mean, you 2 years ago, I remember us doing our campfires 2 years ago. You were so disgusted about having to talk about Lake Belton. You did not even want to talk about them at all. And now you've basically got 3 straight weeks where somebody with Game Day Productions has been dealing with Lake Belton. You have embraced them more. So I don't know. You got your Midlothian apologist tour over here. At the same time, you got this Lake Belton. They've won your respect a little bit, even though it's been a little bit begrudging on you. So I think that, you're not giving Lake Belton their flowers. Ward, you talk about giving DJ Bailey his flowers and whatnot. I think you got to give Lake Belton a little bit more of their flowers.
Move a little closer to the Metroplex. I'll give them a daffodil or something like that.
Should be Red Oak. Everything that could have gone wrong in that Red Oak game happened in that fourth quarter. They should have beat them. They're going to beat Midlothian.
I need to give Red Oak their flowers. So that's where you're right. Give me those flowers back, Lake Belton. Here, take this, Red Oak. And that's what I'm going to do. And that's what happens. All right. Richland, Birdville.
This podcast is well listened to in Lake Belton, and you are just ruining our listenership in the Super Syntax area, Lord. I don't like you anymore.
I tell you what,
small schools hate Super Syntax.
Lake Belton listener can come at me if they're listening to this. I like Micah Hudson. I don't like how he treated my man Joe McCann, but I like him as a player, and we'll see who's better between him and Wesco. Wesco won round 1. Round 2's coming up. And we got Richland against Birdville in 5-5A. Richland's Michael Turner showed out against Newman Smith. You kind of felt like that was going to happen. I don't know. I didn't see your predictions, but I don't know if you predicted a 40-point win. Maybe you did. You're so good at these things. Maybe you did do that.
No. I predicted them to win by a couple of scores, but what they did was completely unexpected. And so now you got the rivalry aspect, because Birdville and Richland has been kind of like, I'm not going to put it on the Mound Showdown level of crazy, but it's at least a tier. It's getting close up to that. Richland and Birdville, these kids have been growing up with each other. I think that's the aspect that makes this game more interesting. I think if you're just looking at the fact that Newman Smith beat Birdville and the way that Richland beat Newman Smith, that, Richland's going to be a big favorite in this game. Richland made it to our 5A Division I rankings this week, so I expect them to take care of business. But I think it could be a little bit closer because of that rivalry aspect. So I'm only going to take them by 14. But a game, we talked about how Midlothian kind of goes 7-14, 7-14. I think this is going to be one of those that goes, the other way, where it's, they have to get that late touchdown that it keeps it a one-score game that moves it to the two-score game as opposed to the other way around. Competitive game,
kind of similar.
That's what I'm projecting. Competitive game. Birdville, Richland.
There we go.
Our rivalry. North Richland Hills. The Battle of Roof Snow.
Roof Snow. I love it. All right. Excellent. How about we move on to 6-5A, because there's not too many good games left, but we have one at the Star. Frisco against Frisco Rito. Frisco, as we've talked already about, got that 10-7 win. Another taking on a Reedy team. Frisco is undefeated in the district. They played all the teams that they should beat, and they beat them. Heritage was the only one that gave them a little comp, but, some coaches were heard saying that's our playoff. We're in the playoffs now after they beat Heritage, and they are. But to move around the rankings there, they got to try to beat some of these other big dogs here, and they got Reedy coming up.
Yeah, this is a fascinating district, and even though the rankings are a little bit off, you got to look at the fact that I expect Frisco to not win another game, and I expect Heritage to not win another game. So if that holds true, then you're going to have Lone Star 1, Reedy 2, Wakeland 3, and then you're going to have Frisco 4, if that holds up. Now, that's why they played the game. You talk about Richardson and Lake Highlands last week. Some crazy things could happen. The Frisco I saw, and I've seen almost all of them now because I've got out to see some Frisco ISD football this year. They're not going to be competitive with Reedy, Wakeland, and Lone Star. But, you never know. I mean, Lone Star's made everybody look good at one time or another. So it's just going to take one weird thing to happen to completely flip things here. But I do expect Heritage to lose out and Frisco to lose out.
Yeah, I'm kind of with you on that. When I saw
Reedy's looking really good. I mean, Reedy is on remember, I came on here and poo-pooed all over him in the campfire. I didn't know if they're going to make it. They've not only proved me wrong, but they've made me a believer the way they're doing it right now.
Right. And Ashton Airy, or Tristan Airy, 1,200 yards already with 16 touchdowns. The guy's proven he can run the ball. Let's move to 7-5A. We got McKinney North End, Forney in, Longview in. There is a fourth playoff spot. Lufkin and Tyler will get the heads up on that before Lancaster tries to win out and try to salvage that fourth spot that they've doing everything in their power to fudge away. But we got Lufkin against Tyler, and the winner of that game is still in this thing, and it's still in this race. I mean, obviously there's wins and losses, but they have an upper hand there. Who do you think is going to win in that game?
I know. I put this on the I put this on the run sheet just to make you mad, Ward.
Yeah,
you're like, I got my MAPSCO out here, and I see the Lufkin down here by Houston, and here we're on the Dallas show, and I got my MAPSCO. Do you even know what a MAPSCO is, Ward, or am I getting too old here? It's like the old.
I know what
it's back when you were a pizza delivery driver. When I was 16, you had to get the MAPSCO out there. You had to look at and find where you're going to be delivering the pizza. It's a big thing, Ward. I know. In Buffalo, you're too good to be delivering pizza or anything like that. You're delivering Buffalo wings.
Yes.
Things like
Deliver
that.
wings and snow. Here, take this. You love it? You got it.
Well, to be a delivery person in Buffalo, to your credit, probably is a lot harder than it is to be a delivery person in Texas. But Lufkin against Tyler High, this is important for Lancaster, as you mentioned, because Lancaster's already beat Tyler, but they've not beat Lufkin. So if Lufkin beats Tyler, now you got Lufkin Lancaster straight up for that last playoff spot. But if not to say that Lufkin and Lancaster doesn't matter, but if Tyler beats Lufkin and Lufkin beats Lancaster, you got three-way tie going on. So you have to kind of figure out, point differentials and whatnot. So probably if you're a Lancaster fan, you want to see Tyler High win this game to give a little bit more of a buffer in that game against Lufkin. But I see Lufkin at their best only be, they 21-21 against Forney in the fourth quarter. They were down by they beat McKinney North for a big chunk of that game, and then McKinney North won 46-39. So they have been competitive with the big dogs in this district. But I think Tyler High, what I saw last week in that second half, the way their sophomore quarterback is kind of figuring some stuff out, and Derek McFall is the best player on the field. I think Tyler High is going to beat Lufkin and give Lancaster a little bit of that breathing room. I still think Lancaster is not only going to get that 4 spot, but they're going to ruin your Houston show, and they're going to go down, and you're going to say Port Arthur Memorial is not a Houston school. Yes, they are, War. They are a Houston area school, and they're going to go down there and defeat Houston area, Port Arthur Memorial, and win one for DFW.
See, that's it. That's where we're wrong on that, because unlike Lake Belton, who you say they're listening in all the time, Port Arthur and Beaumont want nothing to do with being related to Houston at all. They're their own things. We try to shove Beaumont United in with our basketball coverage. They're like, no, that we got our own stuff here, so leave us alone.
It's kind of like that Texoma. Texoma wants to pretend to be their own thing. Sherman, Denison, Gunter.
Yeah.
They're like, we got TV programs up here. No, you're DFW. You know, I appreciate you get a little extra bonus coverage with the affiliates up there. You know, and I'm sure Lake Charles wants to claim Beaumont United as well over there in Louisiana and whatnot. But Port Arthur Memorial, Houston area. School. Beaumont is not an area. Like, you don't talk about Beaumont football. We don't talk about Sherman Denison football. You know, we talk about Houston area and DFW. So Ward, you need to advocate like I advocate for inclusivity. Ward, why are you such a closed-minded person? Why bring in hug Port Arthur Memorial, hug Beaumont, bring them in.
I hug other places, man. I hug like Needville, El Campo, Belleville. I hug all those teams. I don't need to mess with people that have their own TV markets and they're good with where they're at. So
we need Beaumont inside high school sports.
Why do we treat? Let me ask you this, and I'm getting off this Beaumont thing. Why do we treat
Harrah's sponsor us? We can have our first gambling Harrah's inside high school sports, and we can cover Lake Charles, cover Beaumont, and they can give us free chips and free hotels.
We're treating Lancaster like we do Mesquite Horn. Just keep tossing them rope, more and more rope. We just know they're going to come around and show us what time it is at some point. The good news for Lancaster, though, is we're no longer going to have cameras at their games the last 3. Every time we show up, they lose. So we're going to stop showing up until the playoffs, and then they can lose then when we show up. But Lancaster's got to find a way to win these 3.
The difference between Lancaster and Mesquite Horn is they are in the 4 spot right now. Like, they got the inside edge for that 4 spot. They're going to have to do something increasingly dumb to lose that 4 spot. And you know, it seems like they've dumped the 2 quarterback system. I keep telling you, Ward, you got 2 quarterbacks, you got no quarterbacks. Saw Carter Jones solo in the stat sheet. Yeah. They should have probably beat Forney last week. I mean, they messed around again, but they showed me that they can compete with the top teams in the state, which is why I think they're going to go and beat Port Arthur Memorial in the first round of the playoffs. I think they're figuring it out at the right time. Mesquite Horn, I think, is too late. Mesquite Horn is going to have to do something special, like beat. They're going to have to hope they get a 3-way tie or beat Rockwell Heath. Lancaster has to take care of business, and they're in.
All right, move down to Division II. Game I was at was Argyle and Emerson now has a loss on their ledger, and they're going into Lake Dallas, who kind of, if you do the collaboration, they got the pants knocked off them by Argyle, and Emerson lost the last 5 minutes or 5 seconds of the game, 20 seconds of the game, whatever it was. I mean, I'm expecting Emerson to go in there and bounce back, and I'm actually expecting Emerson to play Argyle again this year. They'll get a second meeting. Talk to me about what you think about this game.
Now, I want you to talk to me, Ward. I want to hear about this sophomore quarterback over there at Argyle.
Jasperson. Well, Jasperson, he's already answered to a trivia question. He's the person that scored the first points at Melissa's new stadium. They threw him in there at the 1-yard line. He shoved his way in there. The kid's got an arm, and he's not shook. And the best thing about him is he's got that offensive line, dude. I walk next to this one offensive line. Diggs, people who know you're a tall guy. This dude towered over you at 71. I'm looking up at him, and it proved because Emerson could not tackle anybody in the running game because they just controlled that line of scrimmage. Argyle did, and I think maybe that's what's going to be the factor with Argyle's little bounce back here after getting beat by Melissa and Lovejoy pretty good. Is that they've relied on that offensive line, and their offensive line is doing stuff, and Jasperson is making the passes when he needs to. At least he did in that Emerson game, although I did see Michael Hawkins do two of the greatest plays I've seen, eluding everybody for the one touchdown run. He must have juked 5 guys out of his shorts, and then throwing that one pass to tie it up. He had to elude the rush on that one. All the stuff you want your boy Dak Prescott to do, that's what Hawkins was doing at the end of that game, making the plays needed to get overtime. And now they're taking on Lake Dallas, and I think they'll be right back on you throwing ridiculous point spreads at Emerson and having the Emerson fans saying, I don't know how we can live up to it. Why is he doing this to us?
And then they do it. I think they're going to take it out on Lake Dallas. And I think, like you said, we're probably going to see an Argyle versus Emerson rematch game. And I think this is going to help them because this is the first time like we talked about last week, Argyle, this is not the best team that they've seen. Emerson, they've seen Lovejoy, they've seen Melissa. So, they were like, okay, we've seen this speed, we've seen this style, we've seen good quarterbacks, we've seen average offensive lines. You haven't seen us yet. And Emerson had not seen them yet. And I think that was a big factor in that game, that Argyle had built up that confidence, and you throw in the sophomore quarterback who had a great game, and the offensive line just bullied them. And I think that's going to make what the coaches are telling them in the weight room and the hard work that they have to do, that message is going to be amplified now because now they know why. It's great when you're beating teams it's like with Forney. Forney had been beating teams by 60 or so until they got hit in the face. And once they got hit in the face, all of a sudden it's like, okay, now we've got to figure it out. And we're going to have to find out how Forney bounces back after being hit in the face by Longview and Lancaster. And now they still got McKinney North and Tyler. So they still got some games of importance that they have to figure out there. And I think Emerson's getting back to a little bit easier because after you get Argyle, you got Lake Dallas, and they're probably going to handle things. But you're going to be looking at Wichita Falls Rider in the playoffs. You're going to be looking at teams that are going to hit you in the face, and I think that's going to help Emerson get there. So I think when Emerson is better than the team, they're going to take care of business. I think right now, and I may change my mind when I do it later on, I'm going to give it 40. I think we're going to see like a 52-12 kind of a game because Lake Dallas going to be going for 2 points, trying to get the point spread off. So like a 52-12 kind of a game. So 40 points right now. By the time I'm doing my predictions on Thursday, I might even go higher, Ward. Right. I'm that kind of benevolent guy.
Anxiety tells Emerson fans are like, oh God, we're not going to be able to make Diggs happy with this if we don't win by more than 40. We win by 35, he'll be pissed at us. Hey, let's talk about the other game. So this is what's funny about it. We've been talking about Memorial for a while, right? And I don't know if you watched Seinfeld. I watched Seinfeld religiously, and there's one episode where Kramer gets in the car at the used car dealership, and he wants to see how far he can go on empty before it runs out of gas. And he just goes on and on. And on. That's kind of what I was feeling like with Memorial. How many games can they go without winning before they have to win to get into the playoffs? And they win 7. And I was like, maybe they can. I mean, they wouldn't have made the playoffs if they lost 8th. But then they finally got their win, and they got it in solid fashion, 48-0. Now they got Denton to play. Can they make the playoffs like you're saying? I mean, you've been predicting it for a couple of weeks. They're going to be the best 0-7 team you ever did see. They're going to the show.
That's why they call it a car reservation, Ward, because I reserved it. I expect a car to be here. I don't watch Seinfeld, but I do know that clip, so I have to at least reference my one Seinfeld thing I do know since you wanted to invoke Jerry Seinfeld into our Digging for Wisdom podcast. Speaking of that, Ward, I'm going to go off on a little bit of a tangent because there's a comedian who I'm having a bromance with. His name is Jason Earls. And Jason Earls, his son plays for Plano East, and he's a famous comedian. He's got more followers than we do, Ward, as inside high school sports. And he's going to teach me how to be funny. Like we've connected, and he's going to teach me how to be funny one day because he's a famous comedian. And we're going to have some podcast segments where maybe in the campfire he's going to help train me to become a funny person, Ward. So get ready, as season 3 is going to be the season of bits. coming up, and I'm already thinking of Campfire 2024, and Jason Earls training me to be a funny person, to be a comedian sort of person. But what's not funny has been the fact that who's going to get the fourth spot in this district. I've been telling you, like Memorial, you can see it getting better every week. That game against Lake Dallas, they were almost there. They finally took it, and I think we're going to see 3-7. Frisco Memorial pretty much get fed to the Wolves in the first round of the playoffs. But, I think Colleyville Heritage is going to have their way with them. But Frisco Memorial is going to get in there at 3-7, and they're going to take care of Denton this week. I'd say by 14. I mean, my Frisco Memorial team, they win and lose with big numbers, and this Memorial team is going to continue on.
Well, who do you think is going to be the second place team in 4-5A? Is Grapevine good enough to be second? Is it going to be Arlington Heights? Because Grapevine's got Wyatt now. Still don't know the status of Cade Barrett. I'm assuming he's not back because the coach had told me he didn't think he'd get back till the very last week of the season, if at all. What do you think when Grapevine takes on Wyatt? Because, man, Grapevine, I wish they were had better teams to play during this stretch so we could see where they really are at, because they seem to be a mess right now.
And every time we kind of look at them fractionally, and what I mean by that is you look at that first half against Fort Worth Northside, that was a 14-7 game in the first half, and they were able to kind of pour it on in the second half and take care of business, which makes me very worried. If this was the O.D. Wyatt I thought we were going to have at the beginning of the season, I'd probably take O.D. Wyatt. So I think we're going to take Grapevine, but like you were talking about, I want to learn more about Grapevine through this game. I think it's going to be a closer game than many people think. And I think Grapevine, you talk about, the 14-point spread. Some are 7-14 points, and some are 14-21, where it goes back and forth. But it's kind of a clear and convincing thing. I think this is going to be one of those close 7 to 14-point games where Grapevine probably ends up winning by 14. But I just don't trust Grapevine at all right now. So I think, but I don't trust O.D. Wyatt either. So it's one of those things like, who do I trust more? I think I trust Grapevine a little bit more, but O.D. Wyatt, it's been ugly.
I think this game will go a long way in telling me who you predict the following week when they play Arlington Heights. How they play in this game will tell you where you're going to go on that route.
Need calibration, Ward.
Calibration. We got a game that these two teams that didn't really want to have it like this, but this is the way it is. Everman against Mansfield Summit. The loser gets the death match. They get to play the two-time defending champs in the playoffs. They're going to play this game over at R.L. Anderson. You've already punted on Summit, but can you bring them back enough to beat Everman, or do you think Everman's got this game?
I think Everman's got this game because I saw a lack of offensive consistency, and Everman lost to Ennis in a shootout. The problem was their defense. It really necessarily wasn't their offense. They were able to get some points against Ennis. I don't see Mansfield Summit being able to score enough to take advantage of whatever Summit offense versus Everman defense inadequacies, or whatever advantages they might have in that battle with Everman's depth and on the defensive side of the ball. I don't think they have a good enough offense to take advantage of that. Meanwhile, I think Everman's offense is good enough to take advantage of what Mansfield Summit is going to do. Factor in the fact that Mansfield Summit's good for very much like Hebron, good for 2 or 3 mistakes a game. I got to take Everman to win this game. Probably, again, one of those 14-point games that might be a 7-14-pointer, but I still think 14 nonetheless.
Yeah, those turnovers will kill you. I still don't know how Lone Star's gotten away with all the turnovers they've had, but those turnovers certainly have not worked out for Summit at all.
I got to talk to Coach Rayburn at the Frisco game, and he's
very
aware. He's very aware of the podcast. He's a big fan of the podcast, by the way. And he's very aware of the turnovers, and it drives him crazy. But you know what? He asked me what I thought was going to be that game against Lebanon Trail. I was like, I got you by 38. And what they do, shut them out 31-0. But, a little bit of kindness at the end there. So maybe they're starting to figure something out a little bit after that Centennial game. But nonetheless, we talk about turnovers, and Summit's definitely had them, and it's becoming endemic. And I think Summit is definitely good enough. I think Summit's good enough to beat South Oak Cliff if they play their best game and play a turnover-free game in that game. I just haven't seen it yet, but they're still going to be a very dangerous team. And what what more testament to my rankings could there be than Summit beating South Oak Cliff in the first week after I had Sock 1 and Summit 2, or at least giving us a classic game in the first round of the playoffs.
I got you. Yeah, Rayburn couldn't let you have your way. Unlike me, I let you have your way. You walk all over me, treat me like trash. Rayburn said, he picked 38. I'm going to pull the stars off here with 4 minutes left, and we're going to stick at 31 just so Diggs can't be right. Man, I wish I had the guts like Rayburn. I wish I could come at you like he did, but I'm not going to do it. You're my guy. I'll let it be. I'll just let you have your way. Let's move to 6-5A Division 2. I got to see my man Rags to Riches, Coach Ragsdale, last week at the Conrad Seagoville game, and that was I hadn't seen him since his South Garland days, and he's got the thing turned around, got him up to 6-1. We mentioned the fact the teams are 6-2 now, but the teams they had beaten were 6-27 overall, so we don't know how well they were, and Seagoville just played a complete game. I mean, you've heard it already throughout our show and throughout the week. Bryson Lewis, 4 picks in 1 half. That's unheard of, plus a touchdown catch. So Conrad's got Hillcrest coming up. What do you think about that game, and how's that going to affect the zone play?
It doesn't impact zone play, but this has that Richardson versus Lake Highlands vibe as far as, you talked about Conrad, you just gave them their flowers and how much better they've been, but they're still not going to make the playoffs, and they still weren't quite there at Seagoville's level. They've already lost to Woodrow Wilson. But if they can beat Hillcrest, that to me tells me that next season, if hopefully we don't do the zone play again, they got to figure out something, because it is, by Thursday night of last week, we knew everybody was making the playoffs in this district, which means everything else is meaningless. And I don't think a month of meaningless football is good for anybody, especially, you got to have that carrot of being able to be a playoff team. So I hope they change zone play. I don't like this at all. But this game is fascinating because Hillcrest has played up and down. Hillcrest almost beat Seagoville, but they've had some very head-scratching losses where, Woodrow Wilson just blows them out of the water, and then Seagoville blows Woodrow Wilson out of the water. So which version of Hillcrest are we going to get? Conrad has been consistently maximizing their game, but I mean, when Seagoville is better than you just got to tip your hat because they are better than you. I think Hillcrest is going to win a very close game, but I think it's going to be a fortuitous sign that Conrad is on the way up and a team to watch for next year.
Let's move to 7-5A Division 2. It's this game is a battle for 3rd and 4th place. Crandall against Terrell. They both got beat bad by the top dogs. Although Terrell only lost by 14 to Lovejoy, but that Lovejoy teams, they'll turn it on when they need to. They're trying to stay healthy, for crying out loud. But Chase Bingham, is he going to be able to run all over Crandall and get him into that 3rd spot? Talk to me.
Crandall, they just gave up 76 points. And, you talk about kind of the crazy things. You had the Terrell and Lovejoy being a little bit closer. Now look at Melissa and Denison last week. That game was a little bit closer than a lot of people thought. So I think there's really going to be debate. And I think it's next week, Crandall and Denison, probably for that 4th playoff spot. Now Crandall can obviously upset the apple cart a little bit if they beat Terrell this week. They kind of slide into the 3rd position and maybe have a little bit of a buffer in that Denison game, or we might have 3-way tiebreakers and chaos. But Terrell has shown that they have a good enough attack that I think they're going to beat Crandall. I think they're going to beat them in a pretty comfortable way. But Crandall offensively, if their offense is good enough to get going on Terrell, it can be a whole bunch of chaos there. But if Terrell's defense is good enough to shut them down, it can get ugly. My idea is I think Terrell's defense is good enough to slow them down, not shut them down, but slow them down. So I think Terrell will be a little bit of a favorite. But Crandall, they do these crazy games, crazy scores at times. So can their offense be good enough to figure out something against Terrell's defense? That's going to be the question that makes this game interesting, because although I think Terrell's defense is good enough, I'm not 100% confident. And if Crandall's offense is good enough to get in a shootout with Terrell, they can beat him.
Yeah. Should be interesting. I'm going with Terrell on that one as well. I already told you some small school games that I'm going to be at. I won't be at. I ain't driving out to Tarleton.
You aren't doing anything, Ward.
We will have people there.
You're not going to deal with that stuff. You're going to subcontract that stuff out. You go to Brock.
I'll contract that for sure, man. I got to stay around this. By the way, we went through that whole 6-6A deal with you. I let you go on and on and on. Not once did we say anything about the battle for the axe, which is this week as well. I guess we'll just poo-poo over that one. The 6-6A crowd's already turned this thing off. They don't want to hear about it now, but Louisville plays Marcus for that axe, man, this week. That's going to be a nice one.
Especially a Marcus team that we talked about. It looks like they figured it out a little bit. And Louisville, we're trying to – are they going to figure it out is their question. But I think Louisville has figured it out. I think Louisville takes care of business. I think Louisville wins that game by 3 scores. And then we're going to look at the fact that, Coppell only beat Marcus by 2 scores. Now Louisville has beat Marcus by 3 scores. Was that a fluke?
We don't know.
The world will never know.
We will find out.
Coppell won it when it mattered.
All right, go find that small school Diggsy hat and throw it on for me because I'm going to have you talk about Stephenville, China Spring, and Brock Paradise for me real quick.
Man, I'm thinking about it. As of the time I'm talking right now, by the time the podcast is done, I'll have figured it out. But I'm thinking about going out to Stephenville for that game because you got 2 elements that I like in this game. First of all, these teams score ridiculous amounts of points. So, if you wanted to create a 4-minute segment with 12 touchdowns, this is your game because you're going to have a shootout. China Spring can't stop anybody, but they can score on anybody. And you remember that Stephenville-Decatur game from that game that went to 1:30 in the morning where Stephenville was able to come back and win like a 56-55 sort of game against Decatur. I think we're going to see a game over 100 total points. But China Spring, man, they just find ways to win these games. So I think China Spring's going to win by 7, probably 63-56 or something crazy like that.
Crazy points. What about Brock Paradise?
This game, the District 4-3A report, which you can find on your local podcasting streams, probably just YouTube, but other podcasting streams might be stealing our District 4-3A report for that game. Paradise, I think, got a little bit exposed against Peaster this past week. That game was 14-7 going into halftime, and they were able to pour it on in the second half to give them a little bit more of an advantage to win that game 34-7. Brock absolutely obliterated Whitesboro. Remember, Whitesboro, that was our game of the week a couple of last year, and they beat them 63-3. So I think Brock has figured it out. I think Brock is going to win this game in that 8 to 14 point range. Small school football, you get extra points and weird things and safeties and all kinds of crazy scores. You don't get these clean 7, 14 point kind of games. But I think Brock is probably a little more than 2 scores better than Paradise.
And then we got Solana and Carter. Solana going through, you can call it the gauntlet now. They're going through the 4 big teams down the stretch. They easily took care of Hutch, 50-7. Now they have Carter. It'd probably be similar to that because Solana is really playing good ball. I know Carter can put points on the board, but man, the way the Bobcats are playing, and then they're going to wind up the season with Panther Creek. I'd love to get your prediction, but we'll wait a couple weeks on that. Talk to me about the Solana Carter game, though.
Yeah,
because this is old. I mean, this takes you back.
By the time we get down to there, you're probably not going to want to talk about that game. You're going to be like, let's talk about Duncanville, DeSoto, Lovejoy, Melissa, all these main events. You're not going to want to talk about small schools.
I don't talk like that. I don't speak with that kind. I don't know what kind of impression you were doing.
Talking about Midlothian and Red.
I thought this dude was working on your comedy.
I hate
like that.
I hate small schools. Don't want to talk about Beaumont, honey.
You got to talk about
North Shore winning by 70 every week.
You got to talk about Solana Carter though, because those are some perennial.
That's a funny joke there. You completely disregarded. I called Summer Creek Summer's Eve. There's a joke there, Ward. Think about it.
He still needs to work
Ward.
The fact that a guy has to work on you with comedy that tells me that you're not going to get this right, dude.
I'm going to be funny. He's going to help me. I'm going to work on this. If there's one thing I can do, I can work out.
If Rayburn's listening to this and he is truly listening to this as a coach, he would laugh at the fact you think he can coach comedy. That's ridiculous.
You can coach comedy. I can guarantee it. I'd be on Last Man Standing if they still had that show left. But back to District 7 4A.
You'd be on first man leaving.
4A is meaning I want to talk now, Ward, because I got
You've been talking the whole time, tough guy. You've been talking the whole time.
We don't know about Carter. That's the whole thing about Carter. Carter's got the ups and they got the downs. You remember what they did to Houston Yates? Yeah, did you show that on your show? Probably not.
No, I did not. And Yates is playing good ball now, too, so that tells you.
I know. Carter just took him out to the woodshed. And then we saw kind of the Pinkston thing. Panther Creek barely beat Pinkston. There's a lot of good football right now, and Carter plays up and down to their competition quite a bit. I think they're actually going to play up to Salina being a little bit of an underdog, so I think this game might be more competitive than the point calibrations might indicate. I think Salina's going to win this game by 21, but I think it's going to be a 36-minute competitive. I don't think it's going to be like 21-0, and we're just like, they get a couple of late scores and a little bit of window dressing. I think Carter's going to push it.
All right. Well, they are perennial powers. People love both of those teams. State titles with Salina. Carter's got the little dramatic past they have, but they're still a team that everybody knows across the land. So
Houston Yates knows about them, don't they?
Yeah, they know a lot about them. They know how to put up a goose egg about them. But they didn't make any sense. Somebody needs to coach me up on podcast, I guess. This is ridiculous. Coaching comedy. Let me tell you something. Are you gonna take this coaching and step on stage, or are you just you don't have?
I think I could. I think I can be funny with the right person to mold me into a funny person. Because I got some amusing anecdotes, Ward, and you put those amusing anecdotes with some timing and some comedic, inspiration. I think I can be funny. I think I can do it.
All right. Well, you wouldn't take advice from me because all my hilarious anecdotes, unfortunately, have profanity in them, and I can't pass that on to you. You're a clean-cut guy, except for that long hair. I can't let you.
You're the one who wants to bring back penetration, so I don't know, like first downs, yardages. What do you want to do, Ward? What do you want to get the card? You want to make referees do stats again because you want to go old school on us?
It beats a ref yanking a helmet off and tackling a dude. I'll take him writing stuff down. All right, I'm out of here, Diggs. We'll talk to you next week. We're going to talk week 10.
See you down the road, Ward.
Later.